Hello everybody,
Hello.
Mark Latham here from Watchtower Alert 2, and this is my youngest daughter. This is Charlotte, and Lali Lali as we call her, and she just wanted to say hello. So, have you said hello?
Yeah.
Alright, okay then. So now she said hello, she's now world famous, and I suppose you're going to toodle pip me, are you? You're going to go? Yeah, alright then. I'll see you later. Alright, see you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye. Thought we'd do a short one today. I've been involved with the blood issue for a while, just doing so much reading, and but you just get caught up in other things, don't you? And we've realised that as we keep studying, we're finding more and more information, which almost makes the other information obsolete, because you find more profound stuff, and you just keep going with this. And we're digging and digging, and the more we dig, the more we find, the more we'll find, the more questions we have for those at the WBTS. This video, I suppose, is really about credibility, and difficult to try and correlate the two with what I'm about to say. We just outside our front door, we live right in the centre of a town, literally in the centre of a very busy town. A minute's walk from our front door, and we're in a very secluded and quiet spot. You wouldn't believe we were in the middle of a town, and it's a memorial garden to a very famous individual who's had a profound effect on the world, on mankind, in his own way. He's had a major contribution to play to the health and longevity of life for mankind. Who am I talking about? A doctor called Edward Jenner, and he was born in Gloucestershire, and he had an office that in this memorial garden, as I say, just up the road there. You're sitting on a bench, and you can look at the building that was his brain centre. Fascinating individual. If you go on Wikipedia, you can read a little bit more about him. There are documentaries on him as well. But as I say, he had a profound effect on a lot of medical history, a lot of where medicine is today, and where it's going into the future. A credible man, indeed. He died at 73. He was 1823 he actually died, which is an interesting date, because I'll come back to that in a minute. So what was he famous for? Well, for those that don't know what he was actually famous for, he was a pioneer. He wasn't the only one. There were others that started and helped him and assisted him as time went on, but he was a pioneer in the whole realm of vaccinations. And as a result of that, he was able to manifest a whole new series of events for mankind and for the medical world. And they've built whole foundations based on his work. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is that quite often I'll sit in that garden and look at what that man did in that office, this tiny little memorial garden, working hard for mankind. And I think of people like my little daughter that you've just seen, and millions like her that would benefit from his work through vaccinations, that would keep them alive, safe from disease. And it's a no-brainer today that you'd think that's exactly what we should be doing. But going back to credibility, the religion I once belonged to as a Jehovah's Witness, you'd think that as they claim to be credible, they claim to be ordained by Christ in 1919, spirit anointed as they call themselves, and they brag about that a great deal. Now, as that goes, you'd think, well, if they're Spirit anointed, they're being directed in all they do by what they say and by what they actually put in print. Now, if that is the case, the whole area of credibility is something that I would certainly want to look at now. I question everything now, everything. And so does my wife. It's not just this religion we question, but we all question everything. And do you know what? That's exactly what the scriptures told us to do. The Apostle Paul made that very clear about what you should be doing when you're examining scripture. Do we need an organization to follow through with? Well, a lot of people that are JWs would argue that yes, you do need an organization. This is it. It's ordained by Jehovah God through Jesus Christ. Spirit anointed organization. But do you know, as I sit in that garden down there, and as I'm sitting here with my daughter, and I think of all the lives that have been saved through one issue, vaccination, I would assume from that the society would have a view. And they do have a view. And they certainly had a view back then. Now remember that Edward Jenner passed away after his second stroke in 1823. And part of his legacy, I'm just looking it up on the computer here now, this is what it says, and I quote, legacy, Wikipedia, you can go on it yourself. In 1979, the World Health Organization declared smallpox an eradicated disease. Eradicated, gone, no longer around. This was the result of coordinated public health efforts by many people, but vaccination was an essential component. Jenner's vaccine also laid the foundation for contemporary discoveries in immunology, and the field he began may someday lead to cures for arthritis, AIDS, and many other diseases. So it hasn't stopped. As a result of that work, they've now got rid of smallpox. They've now feeling very optimistic about looking at arthritis, at AIDS and other diseases. 100 years after he died, the ordained, self-ordained, anointed people of Jehovah's Witnesses had this to say in 1921 about vaccination. Golden Age, 1921, October 12, page 17. Vaccination, I'm quoting now, vaccination never prevented anything, and never will, and is the most barbarous practice. We are in the last days, and the devil is slowly losing his hold, making a strenuous effort meanwhile to do all the damage he can. And to his credit, can such evils be placed? Use your rights as American citizens to forever abolish the devilish practice of vaccinations. That's 100 years after Edward Jenner passed away. A lot of good work was done in that 100 years. A lot of very positive work was done in that time. I'm going to re-quote that first bit of that sentence. This is ordained people, by the way. This is Spirit anointed information you're reading. Vaccination never prevented anything, and never will. 10 years later, Golden Age, 1931, February 4th, 293, the page. Vaccination is a direct violation of the everlasting covenant that God made with Noah after the flood. It's incredible to think that this type of material was even printed. do you know, the more I read about these quotes, and I'm sure there are so many that I just keep, it takes my breath away. In fact, my wife has even said she wants to film me secretly as I'm reading this stuff, because I'm rocking in my chair and pulling my hair out and muttering to myself like a madman. Vaccination never prevented anything and never will. Going back to my garden, the memorial garden. If I could speak to Edward Jenner now and show him the quotes after 100 years after he died and said this is what they were writing, that the man's basically a barbarian. He's a devil. All of his work is a complete mockery, and it's disgusting. Basically, it's a violation of the everlasting covenant that God made with Noah. So we see where we're going with this. Credibility. He had more credibility in his little toe than they have with all of their writings. To all you brothers and sisters out there, I ask you this question. What are you doing in this religion? With this type of material, and there's so many comments that we can find. What are you doing? We haven't got onto the blood issue yet, and you know, it's not going to be any better. It's exactly the same theme running through all of it, and we'll come on to a bit of that later. Just to give you an indication of what else we found in Golden Age, I'll just finish off with this. Remember the word credibility here. Aluminium. Golden Age, 1930, May 28, page 650. And I quote, "As a result of the publication of wholesome truth on the subject," that's now called New Light, by the way. I'll say that again. "As a result of the publication of wholesome new truth on the subject, there are fewer people now purchasing aluminium cooking utensils than heretofore. There is also a pronounced drop in the cancer death rate. Much aluminium used, many cancers. Less aluminium used, fewer cancers." Aluminium cooking utensils are a curse to humanity, and their manufacture and use should be forbidden by law. Golden Age, 1932, October 26, page 35. Credibility? We don't have any. This is just a couple of examples. I could talk all night about where we're going with all of this stuff. We're coming on to the blood issue shortly, and I've got so much on my chest, and that'll probably just go on for months, so I'm sorry if I'm rambling. You don't have to watch it. But what I'm trying to say is that when I was a Jehovah's Witness, it wasn't that long ago, and my wife too, we didn't know this stuff existed. We really didn't. And if I'd have known this information was out there, if my wife had known this information was out there, we would have left earlier. It's that important, because people's lives are at stake. When you're being told within the blood issue what you can and can't have, and it's not down to your choice, even though they say it is your choice, and you start dying for that, and your children start dying for that, a cause which will change, guaranteed it will change when they feel they need to change it. It's nothing to do with our Creator. It really isn't. So keep questioning and looking at the word credibility, because I believe Edward Jenner was knocking on my door when he's just down the road in that memorial garden. He's trying to tell me something when I'm sat there in the flower beds on a bench looking at him. He's telling me something. And I'm so glad that my family can have vaccinations, serum injections, and any other blood fraction that we absolutely want and need in order to retain life, because we know that's exactly what our Creator wants us to do. Credibility. Do they have any? No, they certainly do not. Bye for now.